Guys, it is Tuesday, January 24th. It is very mild outside today, slightly mild. I didn't want to make this video. Not that I didn't want to make it, I just didn't want to have to do it right now, I guess, sort of. Because it's talking about a bait that I've only caught a handful of bass on. Like, literally, I can count the number of bass I've caught on it with both my hands. But this week, me and Chad caught some good skipjack. Try to put a picture over there, somewhere over there, of some that we've been catching. I'm not really sure what the real name of them is. I think everybody calls them skipjack. I think that's what they are. And we've been having a lot of fun with them. I mean, they fight hard. They're harder to catch. They come off the hook really easy. They're pretty much like tarpon. They're like the tarpon of Kentucky Lake. They don't get nearly as big. In fact, you know, if you catch one that's 2 or 3 pounds, that's what I would probably call a giant. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some stuff that's going to be going on later this week, hopefully, if all goes according to plan. So let's go to the trusty boat and talk about all this, because there's a lot of information going to be packed in this video. So yeah, let's go over there. Also want to mention that this is a really more of a finesse tactic to me, and I'm not that accustomed to it, and I haven't used it a ton. That's why I haven't caught a ton of fish on it. But over the past month and a half, we have. So that's why I want to talk about it, because it's actually doing pretty well. And like I said, I've only caught a handful of fish on it, on a bass with it, and the majority of them have come off of this bait this winter. So let's go over to the boat and talk about it. So here we are in the boat, trusty old boat. Let's see. First off, what is it that we've been catching fish on? Well, pretty simple. It's pretty what I would consider a finesse tactic, because I don't have to use it that much. But it is a little suspending jerkbait like this one. This is by Vicious. I'm not sure what it's called. They have newer models since I bought these. They have one that's called like the 110. Everybody's got their 110, whatever. This one I like because it has a great suspending action. It goes down 2 to 4 feet, I believe, and it looks like a bait fish. It looks really good. First off, let's talk about the color, because that's really important. So on my lake, shad are the predominant. That's what everything's feeding on, is shad, and they're really small right now. Unless you go off on the ledges and stuff, I think they're a little bit bigger. I'm not really sure how that works out. But I know for a fact that they're smaller. This one is a chrome color, and then it's got the little sexy shad type of color with it. It's not exactly what I would use on bass right now or ever, because it just doesn't have that shad color to me. But here's what makes it a little bit different. For whatever reason, I found out that these skipjack just absolutely hate the color blue. Like, they attack everything I've ever tossed in the water that's got a blue color to it. Why that is, I don't know. I know that sexy shad is a color that is used on our lake a ton because it catches fish. And this one's similar, but it's not exactly what I would use. It's a little bright for me personally. Fish don't seem to care. This is just one of the jerkbaits I use. I have a jerkbait box. I have some big musky top jerkbaits and stuff in there that Rapala makes. And another bait that I've been using with success is the Rapala Shadow Wrap. They've been working pretty well. The shallower ones have been doing well in more of a natural shad kind of color. It's not so bright, it's more of a clear color. And it's worked really well for me here lately. It's a little bit longer. It's about like that. I think it's like a 5-inch bait. And those have been catching fish really good. The important thing here is I'm fishing both of these lures with the same setup, which is what we're going to go over next, is the setup. Now, it is important to remember that not all jerkbaits are made the same. I'm including this in the setup because it's kind of how it helps set up. You've got your suspending jerkbaits like this one, like the one I'm using. They just kind of set in the water. And then you've got the floating jerkbaits. They float up. As soon as you kill them, they start floating. Now, figuring out when to use the two is really important. I'm using this one right now, the suspending one, because whenever that lure stops in the water in the wintertime, you want it to just sit there. Because these fish aren't active. You don't really want them to look active. This isn't a crankbait. You want it to stop and just sit there and look like a bait fish just suspending. And that's really important because, like the fish, the bait isn't really going to be moving that much either if it doesn't have to. And if it's not moving, it's kind of an easy meal for a cold, lethargic fish. So that's something to remember. Now, the floating ones are, in my case, in my experience, they work better during the summertime. The difference being that the fish aren't as lethargic and they don't just want to sit there, they will move. It creates kind of a reaction bite. And during the summertime, you can use that a lot better than you can a suspending bait. However, you can still catch them suspending in the summertime. Alright, so once you've figured out the color of the lure that you want to fish, which it needs to be, I didn't mention this, it needs to be something natural. It needs to be something that the fish are usually accustomed to seeing, their forage, something like that. I forgot to say that, but I said it now. After you figure that out, you're going to have to figure out how you want to fish this lure, or what's comfortable for you. Most guys prefer, for whatever reason, a shorter rod. I think it's because they don't want to hit the water whenever they're jerking it around. That sounded really bad. But they shorter rod for the jerks. I use a 7-foot rod myself. That's just me. I have a lot of 7-foot rods hanging around. I'm actually about to switch over to a 6'6" and start using it because it's a little, like I said, it's a little bit shorter and it's better for me. Now, important thing to remember with this is the action of your rod. This bait, just like any other bait or any other crankbait style, treble hook style bait, you need some give in your rod so you're not ripping those hooks out of the fish's mouth. That is very important, and that will save you a lot of misses. You don't want to go out tossing this bait on a heavy, flipping stick that's going to freaking jerk the hooks right out of the fish's mouth. This is my cranking rod. That's why I use this lure on this rod, just because it's already set up for me like I want. It's a 7-foot medium moderate. I actually throw big baits on this, believe it or not. It's rated for some bigger baits, up to almost an ounce. So it works for a lot of different things, even though it is a little light and it's got some tip to it. It's got quite a lot of tip to it. So that's why I've got it set up on this specific rod. Another aspect of this rod is I keep the same reel on it. The reel is a 5-to-1 reel. It's a slower reel. Number one, for cranking, I use it for cranking, but this isn't a cranking video, this is a jerkbait video. It's kind of the same deal though, because you're not really moving the bait as far with this setup, which I like, and it comes in handy for your style, or this style of fishing. So that's why I do that. So after you get your rod selection, you figure out what rod you want to throw it with, and you get your reel ready, the next step would probably be your line. What kind of line do you throw this on? Whenever I think of jerkbaits, I think of crankbait style fishing, clearly, because I use a crankbait rod for this. You want as line as you can get away with, especially now in the wintertime, because those fish have a lot of time to think about if they're going to eat the lure or not, and if there's something off about it, like 50 yards of line laying there, they're not going to want to eat it. It's a small diameter line. This is 10 pound. You can go as high as 12, even 15 in some places. If you're on rocks and stuff, I prefer 15. And some people go really light, like 8 and even 6 pound line I've seen before. I don't roll like that. I can't roll like that. That's not my thing. That's too light for me. So, light line, and really quick, that doesn't change. If I was throwing a bigger bait than this, I would still use the same light line for obvious reasons. You don't want the fish to be able to see it. After you figure out your setup, what you're going to throw it on, you got to figure out where you're going to fish this bait. And there are a ton of good places where it works. Even on my lake on Kentucky, on the ledges, they have some that dive down to, I think, 15 feet deep. And that could be a real killer, but not a lot of people use them anymore, I don't think. One of my favorite things... One of my favorite things to do with it is find where the fish are stacked at. One of the places where, well, the place where we've been catching fish on it has been where they're just stacked, eating, munching on shad, munching on whatever they can find. I know there's a lot of crappie in the area and stuff like that, small bluegill and stuff, and they've been eating on that. So I feel like that a jerkbait is a good presentation to give towards them because it's what they're seeing. Another, it just depends on what your forage is and where you're located. I've been fishing a lot of bluff walls and such where there should be fish up sunning right now because it's wintertime and the water's cold, but they're trying to get warm. They might even try to get a good bite to eat in the process. So that's always a good place to go. It depends so much, especially if you're on fish, because whenever, I could be throwing a crankbait all day, catching them on it, and then they stop. And whenever they stop, you can slow down with a lure like this and just fish it more thoroughly, the area. So that's kind of the way I think about it. It really just depends. You don't want to go toss this thing on a grass mat or anything like that. You can hit the edges with it. It's good for that. It's similar to a rattle trap style approach whenever you toss it in grass like that. So you just jerk it out of there or rip it out of there and they'll eat it. Next up, how to fish it. It's really, once again, it depends. If you're down in the south and you're throwing this thing, you can rip it around all the time and do whatever. In my case, it's winter and it's cold. Okay, those two things aren't my favorite in the world. I don't like fishing slow. That's why I don't like fishing a jerkbait. But in this case, you have to do what you have to do. So, usually with a jerkbait, it's like a jerk, pause, wait for the bite, jerk, pause, wait for the bite. But I've learned fishing it the past few weeks that how important cadence really is. Like with with skipjack and stuff, I've been jerking it, not stopping, and I wouldn't catch one. But whenever I'd sit there and I'd jerk it once or twice and pause it, they'd bite. You just have to sit there for a second and wait on it. Whatever time of year that changes all the time, they're always wanting it different. And one thing that I've noticed the other day whenever we went out, I could not get a bite unless I tossed it out and I'd get it down to depth and I'd let it suspend there and I'd jerk it one time. And if I jerked it one time, I got a bite. If I jerked it 2 or 3 times, they didn't want anything to do with it. It's just that little reaction strike that they want out of the whole ordeal. And that's really important. Your cadence is really important. Next, just figure out what works, and that's it. Next thing, I'm trying to get this over with as quickly as possible, would be your hook set. A lot of times these fish hook themselves with this lure because it's got the treble hooks. One thing I do whenever I hook into them, I sweep to the left or to my right, whatever way I want to sweep, and to get that hook in there the rest of the way. It's not one of those where you're trying to you're not flipping trying to set a big hook through a fish's mouth. It's just, you just sweep lightly and they're on. So that's pretty much my rundown of the jerkbait. That's as far as I've gotten with it, and that's what I know about it. So there's my little learning session, sort of. Here's the rod I'm about to switch over the jerkbait to. This is a 6'6" Candy Apple number 8 tackle rod. It's a medium heavy, but it's got some tip to it. It's got quite a bit of tip to it, actually. So that's what I'll be switching that rod from. I can crank with this. I can do just about anything I could do with that rod. I'm not going to throw deep cranks on it though, like I was going to, or like I do with that rod. So there's that. So we are going to go out later this week and try to recreate last week, which I didn't get on video. We're going to try to catch some more skipjack because multi-species, that's a little bit different for me. I think it's going to be pretty good. They've been there for a couple weeks and I don't see them moving. There's no reason for them to move because what I'm fishing is it's got power to it. It's a I forgot what it's called. It runs power. It's like a generator pretty much. So there's no reason for fish to move off of that. And so we're going to go do that. But also this week we are going to clean out the carb on the boat and see if it'll run. If it'll run, then we probably won't go catch skipjack. We'll probably just run around the lake into pockets and stuff and go flipping, which I'm perfectly fine with. Now, if we get the boat running, we are not going to do this whole jerkbait thing. And I'm not going to complain about that, and I hope that you guys don't either, because there's actually a really good thing that could come out of this. I've been planning a trip to a lake for the better half of a year. It's probably been a year and a half, really. Matthew came up with the idea, and it was just something funny, but it turned into something more, and I want to go do it. So that's a little update on what's going on. We are cleaning out the boat, making it look as pretty as we can. It's not going to look that pretty because, carpet issues, and it's got leaves and stuff in it right now because I don't have a cover for it yet. So that's pretty much it. We're getting ready for spring. It's going to be a good time. I cannot wait to show you guys some of the fishing that's going to go on during this time. So, thank you guys for watching this slightly long video. I will see you later right here on the Ken Arnold Fishing YouTube channel. Thank you guys for watching.